Hello. Today I'm going to tell you an incredible story. In 612 before Christ, the combined forces of Babylon, Media, and their allies besieged Nineveh, destroying the capital of the Assyrian Empire. This event struck a decisive blow, ending Assyrian dominance and reshaping the political landscape of the ancient Near East. The fall of Nineveh was accompanied by looting, fires, the death of its king, and massive losses among the population. The region was later divided between the Medes and Babylonians. Historical and archaeological evidence confirms the extent of devastation and the collapse of the empire that once ruled the Near East. If you enjoy this kind of content and want to hear more fascinating stories, make sure to subscribe and leave a like, but only if you're genuinely interested. Get ready for the story, and to those listening before bed, I already wish you sweet dreams. Since my return to Babylon, I have found no peace. Complete strangers stop me and ask, "Is it true, Dayane, that you saw it yourself?" "Not just saw," I answer firmly. "Had I not escaped to Ecbatana, our Babylonian and Median armies might never have united, and Nineveh, the den of lions, would still stand to the ruin and shame of all black-headed people." People then look at me with disbelief and scorn as if I am a braggart. Their eyes say, "Isn't that too much for you, fatherless Dayane? Tell us, were you a warrior, a royal spy, or just a mule driver?" I answer in my heart, as if Marduk himself could not raise a simple man like me, an orphan boy, and cast into the mire the most noble lord. It was by his will that Nineveh, whose fame resounded throughout the world, was swept from the face of the earth. To avoid repeating myself, I went to the palace square to the scribe who records petitions. He inscribed my words on a clay tablet, and at the end I pressed my left thumb as proof of truth. Our journey began, as all journeys I undertook while in service to the Egibi trading house. The caravan filled nearly the entire spacious yard by Babylon's north gate. Like other mule drivers, I stood by the pack animals, waiting for the house's heir, young Egibi. He was a lively and cheerful man, skilled in his trade and adept at speaking with all of us. He greeted us on the porch, then walked the length of the caravan, checking cinches and pack bindings, joking merrily. That morning, an old man with a red face and gray mustaches stepped onto the porch, proud like a turkey. Uncle Muker, senior mule driver, fell silent at the sight of him. I and the others followed his lead, realizing it was Egibi himself, the owner of the house and second richest man in Babylon. Without greeting us, he beckoned Muker inside and disappeared. We exchanged puzzled looks, unsure where young Egibi had gone or why the caravan's usual order changed. Time passed until Muker appeared with a man about 40, dressed as a 3-year mule driver of the Egibi house. "Dayane," Muker addressed me, "this man will lead your first mule." "Let him," I replied, "but will I keep my previous wage?" "Not only will you keep it, but all mule drivers will be paid 2 shekels extra for this transfer." This was Egibi's command. Surprised voices filled the yard, and among them, the mule cried as the new driver approached. My mule hated strangers, but 2 shekels are worth enduring his cry and other troubles that come with a newcomer. Why did old Egibi, famous not only for wealth but also for stinginess, suddenly loosen the purse strings? The new driver did not give his name. Following him, I observed his actions and quickly realized he was inexperienced with mules. Trying to stop my mule, he shouted "True" as if it were a horse. His greatest worry was the mule's slow pace. Frequently, he ran to Muker, flashing his eyes to indicate they should go faster. Who gave him such authority? I thought. If he is not an ordinary driver, why make him my assistant? By noon, we reached a hollow where Assyrian guards stood. Assyrians usually let our caravans pass without trouble, for a hefty bribe from Egibi. This time, though, a curly-bearded Assyrian warrior in a shining, pointed helmet and copper armor ordered us to stop. He and other soldiers inspected every pack. What? Egibi always traded dried dates, grain, and food, never breaking the Assyrian arms embargo. Uncle Muker would never have allowed swords or spearheads in our packs. Assyrians had impaled his nephew, servant of the house of Muresu, for smuggling weapons. Despite the delay, we reached the watering hole before dawn, where we always rested. We unloaded the packs, watered, and fed the animals. As we settled for the night, I overheard a conversation between Muker and the impatient new driver. "This won't do," said the impatient man. "We're crawling like turtles. We were delayed by Assyrian jackals, yet we arrived on time. Don't you understand? We must go faster. Mules are not horses, Muker protested, and they're heavily loaded. Order to leave half the load behind. Leave it? Muker exclaimed. They'll have my head for that. They won't, said the impatient one. But if we're late to Ecbatana by even one day, the Assyrians will catch us. I didn't hear the rest of their argument as I fell asleep. Perhaps it was just resolved in Muker's favor. Anyway, in the morning we were told to dump half the sack contents onto the ground, one heap of grain and one of dates. Mice and birds feasted gladly. Why must we arrive at Ecbatana on time? Why have we grown afraid of the Assyrians? These questions troubled me the whole next morning. Is some misfortune awaiting, as I heard from the gray-bearded Judean Saul? But you have yet to know about Saul. On our street near the royal stables, next to my uncle's hut, he took me in after my mother's death, lives a Jewish family. Saul and his grandson Moses, my age, came to Babylon against their will. They, like many other Jews, were brought here by command of the Assyrian king, a sore in his liver, as Saul wishes him every morning after praying to Jehovah. Jehovah is the God of the Jews. They pray only to him, not many gods like we Babylonians. In my free time, I help Moses knead clay and lay out molded pots to dry. Moses, like me, is an orphan. Assyrian soldiers killed his parents and older brothers who defended Jerusalem. His sister was taken captive. Moses does not remember his homeland, but Saul remembers all and loves to tell his hardships. Sometimes, while turning a potter's wheel with his bare sinewy foot, he sings the song prophesying the fall of Nineveh's lion's den. I love this song. It stirred hatred against the Assyrian jackals enslaving our Babylon. I especially liked its opening lines, and a crushing hammer will rise against you. I remember now, on the third day at noon, the impatient man suddenly stopped and crouched, inspecting the sand. Coming closer, I saw a deep wheel track made by an iron-rimmed chariot crossing the caravan path trampled by feet and hooves. Yes, a war chariot had been here, one I had seen many times. But the track revealed something to the impatient one I couldn't guess. His face paled. Shouting, "We're late!" he rushed to Uncle Muker. We hurried the mules even more. Whips cracked and curses flew in the desert. But all was in vain. Towards evening, Assyrian horsemen caught up with us. Among them was a curly-bearded warrior who inspected our caravan near Babylon. Those foul dogs bound us and threw us to the sand. "What are you doing?" Uncle Muker shouted. "We are peaceful merchants, servants of our Lord King. Egibi, the first friend of Nabopolassar's deputy, servant of the Assyrians, is a traitor like all of you." "A servant?" shouted the curly-bearded man, raising his hand, striking the elderly man's face. Muker said nothing. But the impatient man wailed and rolled wildly on the ground. The Assyrian laughed and ordered a fire lit. Soldiers tore open our packs and threw everything burnable into the flames. The words of the curly-bearded man explained everything to me. I understood that Nabopolassar, called the Assyrian sycophant in Babylon, had betrayed his master. The betrayal plan had likely formed well before the old Egibi ordered the caravan assembled. Someone had the idea to use the caravan to send a critical message to Ecbatana. We were promised 2 extra shekels, not for speed but for the risk we didn't even guess. I was bound less tightly than the others. At night, when the fire died, I bit through the straps on my legs and freed my hands. Then I quietly crawled to my mysterious neighbor. I wanted to help him escape. But he whispered, "Don't waste time, Dayane. Go to Ecbatana and deliver this. The chariots must unite near the Snake Pass. Remember, near the Snake Pass." That was his mission. It fell to me to fulfill it. I will not tell how I lucked to escape unnoticed, wandering the desert to reach Ecbatana. I will only say that I was the first to meet young Egibi at the gate. After all I endured, that meeting did not surprise me. It was a missing link in the chain of events. Egibi rushed to me. "Dayane, why alone?" "The caravan was captured by Assyrian dogs," I said. "We were bound. But I was lucky to escape. The man whose true name I do not know ordered to deliver this. The chariots must meet near the Snake Pass." Egibi kissed me and rushed to the city. Soon 40 chariots left Ecbatana. Drivers whipped their fast horses. Archers beside them shook their long bows. Medes, standing by the street, shouted encouragement. Though I did not understand Median, it was easy to sense the people wished them victory over hated Assyrians. The rest you know. Our Babylonian and Median chariots united and marched victoriously on Nineveh. Near its walls, the Assyrian infantry was destroyed. The Assyrian chariots were elsewhere, in Phoenicia at the time. When we arrived at Nineveh with young Egibi, battering rams had not yet broken the walls. I had seen these miraculous machines before, but this was my first time witnessing them in action. Like giant bronze bulls, they rammed the walls, sending clouds of dust rising. The Ninevites tried to stop the rams by pouring molten pitch from the walls, but it did no harm. The attackers withdrew as soon as Assyrians with buckets appeared. Unable to withstand the blows, the walls fell in one place and soldiers rushed through the breach. From the city came the clash of swords, screams and groans. Troops poured into Nineveh wave after wave. Finally, the gates opened and the chariots in the ravine thundered forward to Nineveh. Watching the giant wheels spin, with sides fixed to the axles, I remembered old Saul's song. And the crushing hammer will rise against you. Chariots fly through the streets, rumbling in the squares. They shine like fire and flash like lightning. When young Egibi and I entered the city, bodies lay strewn everywhere in the poses in which Nergal found them. A warrior was dragging two half-clothed women with tangled hair. They struggled and cried that their children were left in a nearby house. Chariots stood in the main square, loaded with leather bags stuffed with what I realized was gold and silverware. Drivers and archers carried more and more loot from massive gates adorned with colossal stone statues of half-men, half-bulls. Two men barely carried a large carpet. One wore a lamp glowing with gold and precious stones on his head. Another collided with him, dropping the lamp and scattering pearls and gold rings on the ground. Several infantrymen rushed to gather the treasure, filling their quivers with pearls. The charioteer fell onto his trophies, but the infantrymen dragged him away and began to collect pearls by handfuls. At his shout, his companions came running. A fight erupted, joined by more and more soldiers, none of whom even knew what had caused the quarrel. "This will take long," Egibi said. "We can roam the palace calmly without fear that someone will consider us enemies and turn us into slaves." As we walked the square, Egibi explained that the enmity between charioteers and infantry was as old as horse warfare itself. Charioteers earned more, came from wealthy families, and received more booty. After conquering a city, war chariots turned into carts packed with trophies. Sometimes prisoners were tied and dragged behind them, forced to run when the horses were urged onward. Infantry followed the chariots kicking up dust. Hence the rivalry. Although the palace had been plundered, there was much to admire. Stone slabs carved with images lined the walls, telling of Assyrian life better than any eloquent speaker. Some reliefs showed palace construction. Hundreds dig earth and carry bricks. Others use pulleys and ropes to move a giant winged bull with a bearded human face. Nearby, battle scenes in reeds and forests with mountains in the background. Royal archers drove the cattle downhill. One relief showed the siege of a fortress. Warriors climbing siege ladders, battering rams attacking the towers and walls. Detailed weapons appeared, pointed bronze helmets, metal-clad battering rams, round shields and short spears. "Who is this being done to?" I asked, pointing at a carving of a naked man among curly-bearded guards. "Let's leave, Dayane," said young Egibi. "How cruel must one be to skin prisoners? Did they do that to Uncle Muker and the other mule drivers?" I exclaimed. "No. The Assyrians skin only kings. Uncle Muker and Chief Royal Charioteer Leton were not tortured, they were beheaded." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Our just King Nabopolassar," Egibi comforted me, "ordered these men buried with military honors and their families cared for. When you reach the proper age, by his order, you will be appointed head of the royal stable. Meanwhile, you will live in my house." Passing a hall with a large bed, likely a bedroom, we saw a dark passage. Something cracked under my feet. "It must be a passage to the royal treasury," I guessed. "Let's check," said Egibi as we went into the darkness. Soon we found ourselves in an elongated chamber whose walls were covered with stone slabs carved with scenes. The king's hunt. The king in a chariot pulled by 4 horses, drawing a gigantic bow about to release an arrow. The charioteer behind barely holds the reins of the decorated horses. The arrow is aimed at a lion already struck by 3 arrows. One sticks in the upper part of a foreleg, 2 others in the neck. The wounded beast is weakening, blood streaming from its half-open mouth. Another lion leaps onto a horse, but a hunter thrusts his spear into its mouth in time. We entered a room full of shelves. "Here is the treasury," I exclaimed happily. Egibi bent down to a tipped-over chest on the floor and pulled out a clay tablet. He studied it a moment, then turning to me almost sang. "You're not mistaken, Dayane. This is the treasury. But not what you think. These shelves hold thousands of books, wisdom of many peoples." Books? I wondered. Why would kings who skin prisoners need books? This is another king's library. We entered his palace connected by a passage to the one we came through earlier. This king, Ashurbanipal, besides war, had two passions: hunting and reading. The wall carvings in the first hall show the hunt. This hall embodies the second, his main passion, I think. "How do you know all this?" I asked. At the end of the tablet is a library stamp. Palace of Ashurbanipal, king of the four corners of the world, king of Assyria. "What do these books say?" I inquired. "To know, you must read them," Egibi exclaimed. "We have learned men for that in Babylon." The dark passage smelled of smoke. The way back was blocked. Someone set fire to the king's palace. But Ashurbanipal's palace must have a grand entrance, a gate. Without hesitation we ran, but fear is a poor guide. Several times, not seeing the exit, we ran in circles in the same hall. The smoke thickened. It became hard to breathe. Finally we reached the royal kitchen, hung with carcasses of sheep and game. Surely the king didn't believe the walls would fall so fast and ordered lunch for the cooks. I opened a door. It was a storeroom. Suddenly a boy, likely a kitchen helper, rushed out and nearly knocked me down. We followed him, guessing he knew the way out. Outside, the kitchen boy ran like a rabbit. We didn't chase. We watched the burning palace. Bulls at the front gate were engulfed in flames and seemed to move. The fire spread to the palace from which we just escaped. "Well?" I muttered. "No one will read those books now." "You're wrong, Dayane," said Egibi after a moment's silence. "Clay books fear no fire. Instead, fire will harden them like stone, and people alive 1,000 years hence will read them." That's all I wanted to tell you. But no, when I arrived in Babylon, Saul was gone. He and his grandson had returned to Judea without hearing the details of Nineveh's fall from me.